Hello, 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 and good morning, Patmos Chapel family. Good morning, and welcome to Wake Up at the Well. For those of you who are watching this live, and for those of you who are watching this back later, I'm glad that you have made a decision to join us for this short devotional today. Good morning, Yvonne. I see you in the chat. Welcome. And Oretta, hello. Welcome to you also. So, as you are joining the chat, we're going to take a moment and pray to begin. And today, specifically, we're going to talk about slowing down. 7 ways that I personally slow down and practice slowing down, and not just on Sabbath, but in the workday too. So, this has been a space that I've been interested in more so lately, especially with challenges that we see with burnout and anxiety and depression in the workplace, people who are leaving their jobs because they feel overtaxed in their workplace. So I've been doing a lot of work in that space, and I'm especially with us as Seventh-day Adventist Christians and our focus on Sabbath. I'm very curious, what does Sabbath look like? Not just as a day, but how does it become a verb, a practice in our everyday, even in moment to moment situations? Hello, Jimmy. I see you here this morning too. Karen, hello. Welcome. So I hope you all are waking up this Monday with excitement and optimism, at the least, toward this coming week and how God is working in your own life. But whatever it is you're coming with this morning, I just ask that you um, open up your mind, open up your heart, and be willing to allow God to speak to you perhaps in a new way, in a way that uh, touches on you and gives you some kind of information or feeling that is helpful to you in this moment, and ultimately shows you more of the person of Jesus, guides you more so in the way of Jesus. So that is my heart's desire for you this morning. Let's go ahead and pray, and then we can begin. Heavenly Father, thank you for all you've done for us in giving your Son for us, God, his death and his resurrection. But even more, God, also that you were the kind of God who is patient and showed us the way to live. You showed us what life looks like when we walk at your pace, a slow pace, or the pace that is exactly what's needed in the moment, not rushing, not hurrying. Your timing is perfect. We say that all the time, God. What does it look like to be humans who live according to your timing? Moment to moment in gratitude. My prayer, Lord, is that you would guide us in thinking more about this. And as we talk about this today, might you go before my words, Lord, and impress upon me what you have for your people in this moment. And might they listen and question and challenge and think about how to apply this to their own lives. We just ask that you would make us more of a Sabbath people and a people that glorify your person by following after your Son, Jesus. We do pray this, O God, in your name. May your spirit be with us now. Amen. All right. I see a few more have joined the chat. Hello, Peggy and Howard. Welcome to you this morning. So just to say it again, this morning I want us to take some time and focus on slowing down, what it looks like to slow down. The reason this came up for me, I've been thinking more lately around the space of slowing and Sabbath and what that looks like, not just on the Sabbath day, but in the week, in the work week. I think probably for everyone in this chat and for most of you watching this back, you are a Seventh day Adventist Christian, or at least have a fair amount of familiarity around um, the Sabbath and this idea of we practice the Sabbath, we take a day of rest, a day for recovery and restoration. And probably many of you are quite comfortable with that and have your routine and your rituals around how you like to practice Sabbath and what that day means for you. But one thing that we might not be so good at is taking the idea of Sabbath, which in the scriptures is Shabbat. It is a verb. It's not just a noun. It's not just a day. It is something that is to be practiced. I think we may not be so good at taking the idea of Sabbath and applying it to the rest of life. How do we become Sabbath people whenever we're at work at 10:30 a.m. on a Monday, or whenever we're in the midst of, the full work week, we're tired, 2:30 on a Wednesday? What does it look like to apply the principles of Sabbath in the work week? So I'm very curious around this space. I've been doing a lot of, a lot of conversing with other pastors, but also other secular leaders in the space of resting and slowing and what that looks like, especially in the workplace. And I've started my own organization called the Slowing Institute, which focuses on helping people pause and embed pauses in their work and in their lives and in their workflows and their systems and of their organizations too. So this is an area that honestly is a personal interest for me. It's of personal interest for me, and I enjoy looking into it. And it really arose out of a need in my own life when I recognized I was burning out and felt that looking at my workplace, a previous job that I had, at how hurried everyone was and how hurried the teams that we were working with were. This was at Advent Health Innovation Lab. And thinking to myself, there has to be another way. People cannot simply work so strained and burnt out all the time. So I want to just talk with you a bit about this idea of slowing down and this idea of Sabbath. So first of all, let me go ahead. I want to share with you some slides today. Hopefully I can get these to come up. So give me one moment here as I pull up this screen. So I have a few slides. Let's see. For some reason, it's not allowing me to do it. So I'm going to just talk with you about what I have here. If you look at Isaiah 58, verses 13 through 14, if you pull that up, you'll notice that's the passage which talks about Sabbath and not making a Sabbath a day to do our own pleasures. And essentially to reframe our minds and our hearts and our bodies and to approach that day to look upon the Sabbath as a day of delight. For many of us, though, we've misconstrued that text in that passage, and we consider doing our own pleasures to have to do with desire. That we should not do anything that is desirable to us on the Sabbath. We should not do anything pleasurable on the Sabbath. But that's not what that text is saying. Because just later, it says we should call the Sabbath a delight, which would mean that we would enjoy that day. So when we look at contextually what's being talked about there, doing our own pleasures has to do much more with doing work-related items. It has to do with being productive. It has to do with adding money or adding education, adding to ourselves. This idea that a human being should constantly be improving himself, herself, and adding on to what it is that we are doing. So, this idea of resisting doing our own pleasures has to do with resting, has to do with resisting, as Rich Villodas says, who is a pastor out of Brooklyn. He says it has to do with resisting the idol of having to make something of myself. He says we must rest from the idol of productivity, the idol of making something of myself. And for many of us, we are constantly, both consciously and subconsciously, locked into this idea that in life we need to make something of ourselves, add to our legacy, or make more money, check off our to-do list. And so Sabbath is a day where we don't do any of that, a day where we rest from the idol of having to be productive or add on to ourselves. It's a day where we don't have to measure ourselves or go around measuring other people according to how productive we've been. So, with that said, work then is a kind of doing. In life, we are doing, and that is what work is related to. Rest then could be the opposite of that, a kind of undoing. Not meaning that we undo what we've done, we go trying to take things back. That's not what's meant by that. Undoing, as in, we are doing things, but not for the sake of accruing more to ourselves. We're doing things not for the sake of completing the task. We're doing things for the sake of enjoyment, for the sake of pleasure. We're doing things to delight in them. And so again, Rich Villodas, pastor from Brooklyn, says, we rest not from making things, not just from making things, but from the idol that we need to make something of ourselves. So on Sabbath and in the work week, how can we begin to shift our minds to become Sabbath people who are able to rest from this idea that our value is in how much we've done, or how many followers we have, or how great our work is, or how much money is in our bank account? How do we begin to disassociate with that and find our value in the person of Jesus? How do we take time to live more non-anxiously? And so I am interested in exploring a bit more on that with you today, and going through 7 ways that I personally am choosing to slow down in the work week. This might look completely different for you. But for me, I really want to see, how can I live a life where I'm not just Sabbathing on the 7th day, but I'm taking the idea of Sabbath, this idea that I am not what I make, I am not what's in my bank account, I am not my legacy or how much I have done in my life. God values me as a human being, not a human doer. God values me as a human being, not a human doer. And he values you the same way. So how can I resist the idol of productivity all week long? How can I resist becoming so hurried, not just with my body, but with my mind and my heart, that I am anxious, I am fearful, I am judgmental, I am cynical, lacking faith in other people and myself? How do I resist that and become a non-anxious, peaceful, patient, loving, kind, gentle, faithful person throughout the week, despite whatever situation might show up. So, here are 7 ways that I am slowing down in my life. And you can take these and steal them, or they might spawn new ideas for you. You might hear some of these and think, well, that won't work for me. And that's okay. I invite you to take a moment and just really see what comes up for you. So, number one for me, something I'm doing in the work week, even the work day sometimes. I have the luxury of working from home. So, most of the time I get to work from home. That may be your circumstance, it may be different for you. One thing I do is I walk my dog. And this is number one. I walk my dog not to get anything out of it. I guess I am walking her, and so it helps her, but I'm doing it as a way of just disconnecting. I'm not looking during that time to go out and think about a to-do list. I'm not looking to go out and even pray during that time. I may end up praying, but really is just an act of I'm just going to walk. I'm going to focus on one thing, and that is it. Instead of allowing all of these other things to creep up into my mind, I'm just going to walk. And I do it also, I leave my devices behind. I don't bring my phone with me. I'm just getting out in nature. And if I end up praying, great. If I end up thinking about something or coming up with an idea while I'm on this walk, great. If I end up talking with someone or meeting someone on the walk, that's also fine. But the idea of it is really just to be present and enjoy the walk. Just go for a walk. And I've gone out for those walks, and sometimes they've lasted 5 minutes, sometimes 30 or 40 minutes. I'm not putting a timer on it. It's really just for pleasure and enjoyment. So that's one way that I attempt to slow down whenever feeling hurried in the midst of the week. Number two, this might sound crazy. Okay, this might sound lazy, but I don't think it is. I take work day naps. I don't do it every day, and I usually won't do it more than once, but I try to make a practice of just pausing, especially if I'm feeling anxious or wiped out. I'm going to lay down, cover up with a blanket for just 20 minutes. I take a workday nap. Not every day, but I do try to do it. And I'll tell you what, I actually don't fall asleep most of the time because my mind is racing. I've got all these things that I feel that I have to do. But the practice of it is to allow myself to just feel, slow down, and pause for a period of time. So that's the second thing that I do to take some of these ideas of Sabbath into my work week, to slow down and live a more non-anxious life. Number three, I don't schedule back-to-back meetings. Wherever it can be avoided, I do not put back-to-back meetings on my calendar. I like to have it 30 minutes in between meetings. I find that it helps me to, again, be able to think and reflect. If I am jumping from one meeting into the next all the time, which was a bad habit of mine for a long time, I found that I wasn't getting as much work done. I also wasn't thinking as well. I was constantly speaking with someone back and forth and found myself less able to pay attention. And I wasn't bringing my best self as a result. So I don't practice scheduling back-to-back meetings wherever it can be avoided, and I take that space in between to think, to reflect, or to do individual work that I have. Number four, I bought a light phone, and I use it on the weekends. Some of you are probably like, "What are you talking about? A light phone?" A few of you of church may have seen me with this thing. This is a small little phone. It kind of looks like an Amazon Kindle, except smaller. Here it is turned on. It allows me to do like 6 things. It's a phone. It has an alarm clock. It has a calculator. It has directions. You can put like 100 songs on it, but you have to download them, and then it has settings. That's it. Basically, you can call, text, and you have an alarm clock on this thing. It's very simple, and it doesn't allow you to do a whole lot. For me, I started using this on the weekends. I shut my smartphone off. I push it in a drawer, at least for one day. I don't always get to do it on the Sabbath because of being a Patmos and some of the responsibilities there. But on Sundays, I really do try to take my smartphone, put it in a drawer, and instead use this thing. I found that it's not as easy as it sounds. I have a smartphone addiction. I want to know what's going on. I like to check my messages. I feel like I'm missing out on something oftentimes. So even if you don't end up getting a light phone, which you can find at thelightphone.com, I would highly recommend taking a day, or at least taking a half a day, to shut your phone off each week, put it in a drawer, and see what that's like. Feel what it's like to not have your, artificial appendage, which our phones really are, with you. You might notice yourself initially kind of anxious or fearful, but over time, uh, pleased that you're not uh, constantly looking at it. So that's another practice, my fourth practice that I've been sticking to slow down during the week. Number 5, oh, you know what? I'll say one other thing on that. By doing that, my screen time every week has gone down from 6 hours a day. I was spending 6 hours a day on average by checking my iPhone screen time log, to 3.5 hours a day. So I've dropped 2.5 hours. And that's not just from taking a day off from my smartphone each week. I actually now end up checking my smartphone, even on the days I use it, less. I'm cultivating a practice now of recognizing, wow, I don't always need to check this. So it's helping reframe how I approach my smartphone. Number 5, I read novels. So I am a junkie for reading a good book. But most of the books that I read, honestly, are nonfiction. I love to read books. Like, here's one that I'm reading now by Rich Villodas. I was quoting this pastor who wrote the book, The Deeply Formed Life, which I highly recommend to you. And he comes from Brooklyn. He's a non-Seventh-day Adventist, but he talks a whole lot about Sabbath, and I think he has quite the perspective on it. So I tend to read books more like this, nonfiction, because I'm looking to grow, I'm looking to learn things. So the act of reading a novel is purely for enjoyment. It's a way that I kind of, again, resist the idol of productivity. I need to make something of myself. I need to learn more. I need to do more. I need to take this content and then use it for a devotional or something like that. So a novel is, for me, a way of slowing down. I'm engaging my mind, but I am not looking to constantly learn or accrue. This is just for enjoyment. It's for pleasure. And it helps me to kind of be gentle to my mind at the end of a work day, for example, by reading a little bit, but reading in a way that's pleasing and not constantly trying to learn something or add something to my person. Number 6, I typically take Sundays as a blank space, a day to do nothing. And doing nothing sounds extreme. I end up doing things on Sunday, but I try to not schedule a whole lot on Sundays and make it a day where I have license for invisible creativity. So this term, invisible creativity, comes from Gordon MacKenzie, a person who used to work at Hallmark Cards. He was a very creative individual there and helped Hallmark Cards become largely what they are, in a way. So he believed in this idea of invisible creativity, that Most of our creativity is not uh, evidenced in what we end up making, but all of that is happening kind of unconsciously. It's happening whenever we create space to do nothing, quote unquote. So you might be washing the dishes or vacuuming your floor. And that, in theory, could be invisible creativity. Your mind might get to thinking, or you might come up with something. Again, going back to walking the dog, I guess that's one way that I try to conjure invisible creativity too. Creating space for yourself to think, uh, to simply be, and not necessarily with the goal that you end up making something at the end of it or coming up with a new idea, but really just creating blank space for your own rest, recovery, and humanity, for your own inspiration. For me, I do it on Sundays because my Sabbaths are tend to be fuller, admittedly, um, helping out with Patmos and being there. So for you, the Sabbath, 7 day, might be the best time for something like that, to create a blank space and see what comes up. Number 7, this is the last one. I could go on and on with ideas, but number 7, I pray the full Serenity prayer. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the Serenity prayer, but you've probably seen it at different points as it begins with God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Your will, not mine, be done. It's a beautiful prayer, one that I love. That's actually only the partial prayer, however. There is a full prayer, and I believe this comes from Alcoholics Anonymous. That's one of the original inspirations for this. I find that this prayer helps me to really slow down. So if I'm in the busy work day, if I've got uh, anxiety suddenly coming up or fear coming up, this helps me to recenter, to surrender. That's a better word than recenter. It helps me to surrender control and recognize that God is God in the midst of my circumstance. So to close, actually, I do want to pray the full Serenity prayer because it's longer than the one that I just shared momentarily. But before, I really want to uh, invite you to think about in your own life, what are ways, may not be 7, but at least 3. What are some ways that you can slow down personally in the middle of the work week? What are some ways that you can take this idea of Sabbath and not just Sabbath on the Sabbath, but how can you take it and apply it to your work and to your life? What little pauses can you embed to experience yourself becoming more human? Recognizing that you are a human being, not a human doer. What is it that you might come up with and apply in your work and in your life? I really challenge you to, as you walk away from our time together, write down a few ideas and then try them out. And again, just to give you a quick summary, for me, 7 ideas. These aren't all 7, but 7 things I'm doing to try and slow down and live more non-anxiously. 1 is I walk my dog for no set amount of time, just to do it. 2, I take workday naps where I can, not every day and not for long, but I make a practice of just slowing down and resting my eyes. 3, I don't schedule back-to-back meetings where I can avoid it. 4, I bought a light phone right here, and I use it as my weekend phone when I can, shut my smartphone off and put it in a drawer. 5, I read novels because I tend to like nonfiction books like this one here. So novels are a way that I just read for enjoyment. 6, I take Sundays to do nothing. It's a day for blank space, a day for invisible creativity. And 7, when anxious, I pray the full Serenity prayer, which helps me surrender control and be more present. So, what are some ways that you can slow down in your work week? Sit with that question. Sit with that question even after we part here and come up with some ideas. I really hope to come across some of you this Sabbath. Howard, Peggy, Karen, Oretta, Jimmy, Yvonne, if I see you, I do want to check in with you and ask, did you come up with anything? And for those of you who are watching and I don't see your name in the chat, I please grab a hold of me and say, hey, this is what I'm trying out. This is what I'm doing. I would love to hear. So let's pray to close. And as we do, I want us to pray the full Serenity prayer. So I'll pray it. I'm actually going to have my eyes open so that I can, because I don't have this whole thing memorized, so I can read it. But I invite you to close your eyes if you would like to. And let's go ahead and pray now. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, taking, as your Son Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen. So let it be. Thank you for joining, Patmos family, and anyone who is a guest watching. Thank you for taking time with us this morning. I hope that you found this helpful to you in some ways, and again, challenge you to consider ways that you can slow down in your work and life and to come up with those ideas and put them into practice, especially. Just try it out and see how it works for you. Thank you again for joining. God bless, and see you again soon.